Linda Rush, Dr. Linda Rush, who is the Vice Dean responsible for initial teacher education and is taking some of this forward both in its thinking and in its practice. So, Linda, over to you.
What this final presentation is seeking to share with you is how myself and colleagues have started the process of reconceptualising or reimagining partnership practices at home, in self-examining and critically reflecting on our position and role towards the reconceptualisation of partnership practices. A distinct pedagogy is being modelled in which a focus on the process of learning and role of reflection and reciprocity are central. We are seeing partnership learning as a form of collaboration, and there are many challenges facing anybody involved in overseeing successful collaboration. But whilst acknowledging the challenges associated with collaboration, I am seeing the changes to partnership as a moment of opportunity, in the belief that our existing model of partnership does not quite harness sufficiently the potential of collaboration, or what Langdon and Hudson would call collaborative advantage. Also, I do believe that our practice has become institutionalised in an unquestioning way, and that those of us collaborating, including myself I might add, are doing so because we've always done it this way, and indeed we will carry on doing it this way in what Mary Douglas describes a fatalistic way. So in strategically leading on the reconceptualisation, a starting point for me has been an exploration of my own beliefs and values, informed by my own research and learning and practice as a teacher, as a head teacher, as a tutor working across 3 universities and more recently as a Vice Dean, with responsibility for teacher education here at home. The conceptual or visioning statement derived from my articulation of these beliefs and values, which I unpack in the paper supporting this presentation, has acted as the starting point for the reconceptualisation of practice. And central tenets of the visioning statement are to do with relationships, professional development, and pedagogy. Previous inquiry of mine into inter-organisational collaboration, and indeed a range of literatures around collaboration within the context of HE and outside of that, have highlighted a number of pivotal factors of good collaboration. And such a distributed model of leadership and ways of working and learning, as outlined on the slide, is set against prevailing practice within the context of ITT, which tends towards rules, regulations, and hierarchical ways of working. And such a context is likely, such a distributed way of working and learning, is likely to be resisted by those bounded individuals who tend to dominate institutional cultures and practices. As Vice Dean with responsibility for teacher education and the reconceptualisation of partnership practices, I am keen to adopt a much more distributed model of partnership and leadership of a partnership such as set out here. And this is evidenced within the new Professionalism project itself, and developing practices in respect of curriculum design and development at Hope, and emerging partnership plans with special schools and early years settings which are much more symbiotic in nature. From the outset, the reconceptualising of partnership practices has involved and will continue to involve an extended discussion, not just between ourselves as academics, but with people, professionals out in schools and in broader educational settings, and the students themselves. Particular emphasis to date has focused on the rationale, role and purpose of partnership and the pedagogy associated with high quality personal and professional development. And currently, even at this very moment, a layered approach to leadership is evolving in respect of partnership, because for the partnership as a form of collaboration to work successfully, it can't be led by an individual. We used to have a director of partnership. We don't. Some people within our faculty would say that's not good. I actually think this is a moment of opportunity. The centrality of what is being termed partnership learning has emerged as one of the critical aspects of the new Professionalism project and Hope Centre for Child and Family. And here, partnership learning is informed by a distinct pedagogy, which involves intra-professional learning across boundaries in the field of teacher education, involving academics, teachers, professionals, other professionals working in schools or broader educational settings, experts and students. This pedagogy is fundamentally opposed to any view that involves a simple, nicely portioned transfer of knowledge. It foregrounds the human learner as the active and autonomous maker of knowledge. The conceptualising of partnership learning in this way reflects our developing understanding of the importance of two closely related concepts, learning to learn and learning how to learn, as essential qualities of successful lifelong learning in teacher education, from that of initial professional development, early professional development, and continuing professional development. For the purpose of this presentation, both concepts are associated with a concern for ways of working and learning comprising reflection, intentional learning, and collaboration. And this level of learning, where the learner becomes conscious of his or her perceptions of the world in general, of how they were formed and how they might be changed, is rare. Deacon Crick, in her paper Learning How to Learn, the dynamic assessment of learning power, discusses learning how to learn and learning to learn, and the related concept of learning power in terms of a paradigm shift towards a relational and transformative model of learning in which the creation of interdependent communities of intentional learners provides a basis for the integration of traditional academic skills and outcomes with the learning dispositions such as critical curiosity, meaning-making, resilience, resourcefulness, reciprocity. I am particularly struck by the notion of temporal connectivity and lateral connectivity as discussed by Deacon Crick. These are of particular interest in terms of the promotion of partnership learning. Temporal connectivity refers to a way of being in the world that orientates a person towards changing and learning over time and in different contexts. And lateral connectivity refers to the ideas embedded in a socio-cultural view of learning in which the learner is a person in relation to other people and to cultural tools and artifacts in which learning is frequently mediated through the interactions of learning relationships. As part of the new Professionalism research project, conceptions of knowledge and one's role in the promotion of it have implications for the quality of teacher learning promoted and can be associated with a particular type or types of learning and levels and depths of learning. The more discerning conceptions of one's role in the promotion of subject knowledge and teacher learning imply, in part at Hope, a level of learning and depth of reflection associated with learning to learn and learning how to learn. Those transformative views of knowledge imply a relational and multi-structural level of learning in which an appreciation of the significance of the parts in relation to the whole is intimated and connections are made. Further implied is that reflection is planned with a focus involving systematic research activity with a clear sense of purpose. Here, talk involves sharply focused observation. It's informed by data. It involves evidencing and justifying one's ideas and beliefs and making judgments through one's own action. Even profound reflection could be evidenced. Here, profound reflection produces personal meaning. New ideas are generated as our strategies and personal theories. Previous research into inter-organisational collaboration that I've carried out with other colleagues has been drawn on to give critical insight into our existing partnership practices as a form of collaboration. In this research, key characteristics of enlightened individuals associated with good or promising collaborative practices were highlighted as these people were highlighted as being reflective, informed, critical, dialogic, confident and conceptually driven. And I've aligned that notion of those enlightened individuals with this transformative view of knowledge. This research into inter-organisational collaboration also showed that the nature of the individual and the quality of the relationships between these individuals could be depicted in hierarchically inclusive degrees of collaboration. The most sophisticated one being co-ownership, in which individuals are not limited by rules or accepted ways of doing things. They assume a shared responsibility and they listen attentively. And indeed, that's the kind of collaboration I'd like to strive towards at Hope. Who is the learner? Who is the student in our partnership? If we ask that question, I think more often than not the response would be the undergraduate, the postgraduate, the student who is working towards qualified teacher status. At Hope, I'm striving towards a partnership in which we're all considering ourselves as learners. Indeed, I'd like our partnership to resonate with Michelangelo's motto, I am still learning. In moving deliberately to a more open, facilitative and interpretative pedagogic paradigm, we can critique our existing practice along a number of overlapping continua as set out by Roundtree. And there's some key questions that can be raised in respect of those continua. So, for example, how prepared are we to discuss with one another as participants in the partnership our approaches and assumptions concerning learning and knowledge? Do we want others to take on board our views and approaches, or do we seek to help them to develop their own meaning and learning processes? And finally, do we see the education process as principally concerned with the transmission of functionally based knowledge, or with the wider interpretation of its use, linkages and relationships? And finally, I won't unpack this slide here and now myself. Once again, the paper does this to a certain extent. But here are some illustrative examples, bullet pointed, which I feel evidence how we're moving towards this notion of partnership learning. But I'd like to sort of defer to two of my colleagues who were involved in the creative performance just earlier, because I do see the new Professionalism project and our role as researchers, as tutors, as learners, as emerging researchers, and that notion of reflexivity being a very, very powerful way of modelling ourselves as learners, and for us to be put in a position, sometimes an uncomfortable position, of having to think about our own learning and development. Okay, so we'll just briefly explain.